Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to peel back the layers on one of the most pivotal and, frankly, most mysterious moments in all of American history, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. All right, so let's just dive right into the story that pretty much everyone thinks they know, right? John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor, shoots President Lincoln at Ford's Theater. He gets tracked down to a barn in Virginia, killed by federal troops. 4 of his co-conspirators are hanged. Case closed. Simple as that. Well, not so fast. You see, from the very moment the president was murdered on that drizzly Good Friday, suspicions just started to fester, and over 150 years of really odd coincidences and curious admissions have tangled up the facts and the folklore, leaving us with what is, in a lot of ways, a genuine American mystery. So first up, let's do a quick run-through of that official story. You know, the version you probably learned back in school. The official timeline is, well, it's really clean and decisive. An actor, furious about how the Civil War turned out, commits this awful crime, and then federal troops deliver justice. It's a very simple, open and shut case. But almost right away, with the Civil War having literally just ended, the Northern government started pointing the finger for the whole plot squarely at the defeated South, tracing it all the way up to the Confederate president himself, Jefferson Davis. And look, Booth definitely had some pretty provocative links to the Southern leadership. He was a very vocal sympathizer, and some historians claim he was a full-blown secret agent. In fact, just a few months before the assassination, he actually met in Montreal with the Confederate Secret Service chief to talk about his original plan, which was kidnapping Lincoln. So let's move on to a far more shocking and, frankly, a much more enduring theory. That the real conspiracy didn't come from the enemy South at all, but from inside the Union itself, from traitors deep within Lincoln's own cabinet. Now, revisionist historians, guys like Otto Eisenschimmel, they placed one man at the absolute center of this plot, Secretary of War Edwin Stanton. You see, Stanton bitterly opposed Lincoln's more lenient plans for rebuilding the South and stood to gain a ton of power if the North imposed a hardline military occupation instead. The case against Stanton is really built on a series of highly suspicious actions. I mean, he denied Lincoln's request for a trusted companion that night, he assigned just a single negligent bodyguard, and then all the telegraph lines out of Washington just mysteriously went dead, which obviously helped Booth escape. But the biggest red flag? It's gotta be Booth's diary. It just vanished into Stanton's safe, only to pop up again years later with 18 pages ripped right out of it. Then, 3 years after the assassination, a key player finally broke his silence. Lafayette Baker. He was the chief of the National Detective Police, and he wrote this really strange, rhyming cipher, a cryptic note that some people believe was his deathbed confession, spilling everything he knew. And there's one line in particular that just stands out as this chilling, coded admission. In New Rome, there walked 3 men, a Judas, a Brutus, and a spy. So the big question is, who were these 3 men? Well, interpreters pretty quickly decoded the players. Judas, the betrayer in the cabinet, that was believed to be Stanton. Brutus, the famous assassin, well, that was clearly Booth. And the spy, that was Lafayette Baker himself, the man admitting he saw it all. And get this, just a few months after writing that note, Baker died suddenly. He was only 44 years old. His wife was totally convinced he was poisoned by government operatives to make sure he stayed silent for good. And this brings us to what might be the most outlandish theory of all, one that claims the whole manhunt for Booth was a total sham, because the man they actually killed wasn't Booth Al. Yeah, the people who believe this theory claim the government just needed a body, anybody, to close the case. They say the man killed in the barn was just a convenient lookalike, another rebel agent and fugitive named Captain James William Boyd. Okay, and this is where it gets really, really strange. The man in the barn was supposedly taller than Booth, and he had reddish hair, but in what has to be an unbelievable coincidence, he also had the initials JWB tattooed on his arm and had a wounded leg, just like Booth. And the government's actions just poured gasoline on these suspicions. The body was identified under this veil of secrecy, with very few people even allowed to see it. The official photograph of the corpse? Oh, that was, conveniently consigned to oblivion. The whole thing just seemed designed to prevent a positive ID. So if Booth wasn't actually in the barn, where did he go? This question gave birth to a legend of survival that has proven to be absolutely, well, deathless. I mean, for the rest of the 19th century, accounts just flooded in of an aging Booth, seen everywhere from Europe to India. Deathbed confessions kept popping up in all these dusty little towns, and this is the most bizarre part, in the 1920s, a mummified body of a man who claimed to be Booth was actually toured around as a carnival sideshow attraction. And so, to kind of paraphrase Secretary Stanton himself, the Lincoln conspiracies now belong to the ages. The line between what's historical fact and what's American folklore has become permanently, and I think fascinatingly, blurred. So what's the big takeaway here? Was it a lone actor, a Confederate plot, or was it a massive conspiracy coming from inside Lincoln's own government? With so much evidence lost or hidden or maybe even intentionally confused, the real truth of America's first presidential assassination, it might just be lost to time forever, leaving it as one of our most enduring national mysteries.